That's always something that has to be studied. We have not talked to anybody yet about fire concerns in between the buildings. The buildings are separated enough, a fire is not going to jump from one to the other. And I will tell you, at least in the research that I've done, it is exceptionally rare, and I can tell you in the United States, it's 0 death due to fire in a hospital when the sprinkler and fire alarm systems are working. It's a lot of caveats. Sprinkler's got to be working, fire alarm's got to be working. 0 deaths. And worldwide, you have a hard time finding where a fire in a hospital has killed somebody. So those types of protection systems would be here as well. That has nothing to do with, that has nothing to do with where. It has to do with the right way to do it, no matter where you're at. If this thing was in Antarctica, we would do the same thing. It wouldn't look this way, but from the system savings or system protection, we would do it. We started looking a little bit at how the interior spaces can work. What might that shielding, that screening thing look like that we have in our clinics? It's okay. Some folks liked it, other folks didn't like it. It's okay. How a lobby could look, a lot of transparency. The glass, that's where the money's being spent in this particular design idea, is the quality of the glass. Best quality glass comes from Germany. Flat out, no holds barred, and they do it in Africa. South Africa has quite a bit of it, Ghana has some of it, Morocco has some of it. So we went ahead and said, all right, glass, let's have it. Let's get that. I mean, because a lot of times, I mean, it's very smoggy, humid, cloudy. So whatever light we can get, because a lot of the places because here we probably won't have a problem with power, but what drove us a lot, I was sitting in, I was in several hospitals talking with folks, and the fire went out at 3 o'clock. They just kept right on going, like nothing ever happened. So if that happened here, we want to have some light coming in. So that's where some of the design ideas came from. And then how we could actually, the sustainability stuff, there's no reason that we shouldn't be good stewards of our environment. I know that sounds odd coming from America because we've kind of raped ours, but we're now getting a little bit smarter about that as well. Again, we have a finite resource, and I guarantee you Earth will live. Mankind, global warming, all that jazz, isn't going to hurt the Earth. It'll recover just fine. Always has, always will. We're just getting smarter about it. And how can we use it to actually benefit the project? We have all that. Now we start getting into what could this thing look like. This is not images of what a hospital would be like on the inside. It just gives a sense of feel, a sense of quality that we're going for. So when we talked about, we did our programming, okay? That has to be vetted still. A little bit more detail is necessary. It needs to be revisited, make sure that the direction is correct. And then what we did was translate that into just simple department programs. So we have, and probably a little difficult to see, do this. There we go. So what we did was say, okay, we have X amount of clinics that we need. So we know the square footage of that module, what that needs to be for multi-specialty clinics. And so we just did what we call departmental programming. We're just showing a box that says, this is next to this. Dining is next to materials management. You know, here we have all of our services for the hospital complex that we're going to need. And how can that work and not get in the way down the road? At what we call the B1 level. So this is where you're actually coming off the street, and we have parking on both sides, and we have our clinics and our plaza. We move up, we get into, all right, our big problem right now is women presenting and dying at the door. So we gotta make it real clear, which is why the Women and Children's Hospital actually sits up on top of the cutout, because there's a road that's planned to go right by it, so we can have our OB emergency department right off that main road. And we went ahead and decided we put all of our OB surgical suite right next to the ED. Sometimes you put it up on the floor where women are having babies. They're called C-section rooms. In this instance, we felt it more important to get the ORs right next to the ED. So if mom's about to have a baby up on the unit, if she's in what's called a labor delivery room, and she's about to have a natural birth, if something goes awry, and our baby is turned, our baby, that's a very common thing that can happen. Umbilical cord gets wrapped around. My granddaughter went through that. She was all just fine, and at birth, she turned and got caught up, and they had to cut her out. So we would have a space up on the delivery floor for that, but it would be a very specific for C-section only. The women's ORs would be down here, and then of course their ICU would be down here. Pediatric emergency department is down here as well. So we have women on one side, kids on the other, and an imaging department that serves everybody. So we do it this way so it's easy to see this department next to that one makes sense or doesn't make sense. So we don't have like floor plans that you see all the pieces that go on. We just have a space program that tells me how big that box is and what goes in that box. So we have that. We didn't see the need to go beyond this level at that time because things can change. And so you want to be smart when you actually get into that detail at the time you're not ready to start doing it. And then the adult hospital is next door. It's a bit more the same. It has its own emergency department. We have a neuro suite and a cardiology suite and imaging. Cardiology is a big deal for adults, mainly because of high blood pressure here. Not so much for the smoking, but there is smoking. It's not like it is in Asia, but there are issues with it. So there are layouts, block plans for each of them. You start moving up the building, and now you start seeing patient towers. Two pretty much simple rectangles. What we pay attention to is the red is staff service and patient transport, and the green is public. That's what we pay attention to, is how do people move around in the hospital. You want to control folks. You don't want them going, just wandering all over the place where they don't belong. And you want to make it easy for them. Don't give them a lot of options. Come in here, right to that, left to that, elevator right there, done. Doesn't matter how big or how small. Try to keep things really, really simple. Because it's a hard experience. Coming to a hospital, and especially here. People come to the hospital here to die. That's kind of the mentality. That's the big thing that has to gotta get over that hump. There's no reason it should happen. And we keep going up to eventually what is the 8th floor of the adult. Area summaries, some little code stuff that we did. We had some parking analysis based on what the local requirements are. So how do we phase this thing? Again, we're planning in this particular exercise, both hospitals are going to go at the same time. Nothing says that they have to. Both clinics are going to go at the same time. Nothing says that they have to. The current properties, it's like this. So as we begin to look at how this relates to the entire Med City, future properties want to be grabbed up here so that you can just see how this thing just keeps on growing pretty simply. Not a lot of magic. It's easy. What we have to do is plan where all the utilities, where the energy plant goes, so that we don't move it, because that's kind of, we want to do it one time. And the whole helps us in that area. Then she could grow even further for centers of excellence, whether it was cardiovascular, where you actually have a dedicated hospital, like 40 years from now, you could have a dedicated specialty hospital. For cardiology only, or perhaps oncology, cancer care, or what, something else comes up that we don't even know. We started off with a general operations framework that might interest you, because when we do a hospital, we are sometimes working with a hospital operator, whether it's the actual healthcare group itself or not. Okay, Thompson and Grace is not a healthcare group. They clearly understand the importance and the need and the passion for it. But generally, we're working with a group that operates a hospital, whether it's an actual hospital entity, healthcare entity, or an operations group, one or the other. So here we didn't know. So we started off with some very, very high level of thoughts and ideas on a framework that informed us on how we did our base layout. All depends on, and there's not a lot of magic to it, but it all depends on when a group comes in, such as y'all's. There may be certain ways that you've seen that are better to operate. And then we take, that gets taken and translates into what the building form really wants to be. The various phases of how big everything can be, or how big we planned for it in 3 phases. So that information.
That's a square meter calculation. It's not a patient calculation.
No, it's square meter.
Square meter.
Right. The patient calculations are on the volume studies, which are in an appendix at the end. Then we got into examples of what the detailed programming looks like. That's kind of boring to a degree. We looked at a variety of ways to organize certain departments from block planning. So taking the big box and making smaller boxes. We did that quite a bit throughout. That was just more space programming. And then we got into even, here are multiple ways you can do a patient bed. Architects love doing patient rooms. Those of us who do hospitals love doing patient rooms. I don't know why we always have to reinvent the wheel. So we finally got bright and put down, here's about the 5 ways you can do it. Depends on how you really want to operate it. Generally speaking, you're going to do it this way. You still get a lot of window, but we get a lot of space for our workers and our caregivers. And in this instance, having the bathrooms on the outboard, on the exterior wall is not a bad thing. It's actually not, it's a pretty good thing for us to do. However, there are a variety of ways to do it. You can bring the bathrooms in, or you get a really big window. That's not so bad. It's a little harder on the staff. I personally, as a patient, like it because I'm tucked away back here, hidden. Because nurses have a tendency to leave the doors open so they can walk down the hallway, look, check on you, make sure you're groovy. I've been a patient in the hospital several times. I will tell you the one thing that's universal to most people. The best thing about going into a hospital is getting out. You want to get out as fast as you can. Not a whole lot of people want to stay in a hospital. They want to go home, right? I don't want to use somebody else's bathroom. I don't want to sleep in somebody else's bed. I want to be taken care of and I want out. So as this thing develops, always keep that in mind. In the U.S., we have to always drill that because, you know, somebody has this pen, well, he wants to do a better one because he wants to beat the competition. And it gets kind of stupid. You start to spend money on things you don't need to spend money on. Do you need a 50-inch TV in the bedroom? No. How about a TV that works? That's all you really need. Take care of me and get me out. So that's kind of our attitude as we do things. So there's various images
that reflect these different types of rooms that we show. There's quite a bit of, there was a lot that went into this effort in a very short period of time. Isaac and Odabong and quite a few of the Amos family and quite a few others gave a lot of their time. Same thing on the A&M side, as we communicated back and forth, the architectural studio for the healthcare group. Texas A&M has an architectural program that, for its masters, you can focus in on healthcare architecture. There are very, very few people who know exactly what they want to do as an architect when you come out of school or undergraduate work. Most of us have grown up as generalists. We've done a hospital, we've done a convenience store, we've done an apartment. And then some of us graduate to becoming specialists. Like I graduated to become a healthcare specialist. But there are some people that know it right away. And there are two programs in the U.S. that really cater, two very well recognized programs that cater to that student. And this project was one of their projects. They went and took it on as a challenge for their master's thesis to do it. So there's all these studies of how departments can break down, how the clinics can break down, the modules, how we modulate clinics, like this. You have space down the middle, with OR. You have all work zone, exam rooms on both sides, and then the patients come in on the outside, like we're showing here. Model number 2. Model number 2 is where we're pushing everybody now. But what that does is it makes it a multi-specialty clinic. And there are certain clinics that are pretty, they're 5 days a week, they're dedicated. I got to be operating 10 hours a day because I've got that many patients coming in for OB. Okay, that's the OB pod. How ORs and surgical rooms can be set up, both in 3 dimensions and in plans and in pictures. There's not a lot of ORs like this down here. But we spent some time with, this was GE. Was it GE? It was GE, right? As a partner, potential partner for med equipment and med technologies. Because this hospital has the chance to go ahead and leapfrog a lot of other hospitals. Hospitals now are starting to take technology on. This one can start with it. So we took some of our big rooms and we just went and looked at them to get a sense of what they could be. And that's about as far as we took it. Now, at the same time, while we were working back and forth with Texas A&M's planning and landscape group and the VCs here at this end, and Dr. Chatham Lee led it with a great group of kids, young adults, not kids, young adults. They did a great job. And I told you that as time went along when we were going through this, the infrastructure, the industrial side of this medical city got quite a bit larger. So we wound up going for additional properties. And Dr. Lee's group led this effort with her studio. And so what we were looking at previously is this area right here. Right here. So that represents about 220 acres. I can't remember what that is in hectare. Hectare.
0.4.
Is it 144?
0.4.
Okay. This began to evolve up here where we needed a power plant, and it needed about that size. At the time we had Siemens. Siemens gave me, I'm not a power plant guy by any stretch of the imagination, but they gave us a layout that Dr. Lee and her team and me and our team try to figure out how, because we don't, I mean, it's not like a little transformer. This is like big stuff on the side of the road that you see crisscrossing the country. So it's kind of cool, though. I mean, you don't get involved with that kind of stuff. Likewise, a zone for data center. And then, so we needed about this much property, but the opportunity came to start bringing in additional properties to hook both sides up. This main road still wanting to go through. Currently, it's a dirt road, which you'll be on tomorrow, but it is intended to be to connect both this road and then the main. It's a 4-lane highway just off the property. You enter actually right now you enter into the property roughly right about through here right now. There's also a couple little dirt roads that come out this way. There's currently I can't remember what this facility was, Dr. Isaac, but that's about the biggest thing that's around there. So we looked at a variety of ways to integrate this parcel with this parcel. This is about double. So we could also have a little fire station up here. So that's what we've done. There's been a lot of thought put into it as well. And all it really does is it says it's ready to start. That's what it tells you. There's a lot of information that says, all right, what parts of this do we begin to really focus in on as a team, as a group? What makes the most sense? Part of it's going to be on the medical center side, really revisiting those volumes and fine-tuning the scale. And on the site side, the infrastructure side, all right, we're hooking up the partners for power, the road systems, sewage, all of that has to be dealt with. Either at a small scale and it grows, or it starts off because we think we're going to be able to sell 200 units or rent 200 units. Does the market need that? And that's what we've always talked about. I mean, the impetus for this whole thing has been the medical centers. And it grew and evolved under the leadership of the Davis family. So you've got there's a really good genesis, a good foundation to start with. Edith's group had surveyed quite a bit of it. We've got quite a bit of geotech work that had been done way back. Probably hadn't changed all that much, but we just did some so we could get an understanding for the roads primarily. The buildings are all kind of moving around, and once something's figured out, then we can get specific to the building. So you don't do too much, you do enough. But we have a sense of what's going on out there underground. So more investigation needs to be made as to what's happening underground. Once whatever phase starts up is kind of fixed. So we can just kind of know if we're running into something that tells us we've got to have really exotic foundations, and that holds your building up, and you don't see it. So I always have a hard time with client when I'm spending a bunch of their money on stuff they don't see. Then again, if it falls over, they'll see it. So we don't know yet the detail of what's happening directly below the buildings, because we just haven't fixed them yet. I think the water line, it's got to count about 1.25 miles, or roughly 2 kilometers to bring water to this property. So that has to be figured out. How does that work? Who does that? I'm not saying anything I think that's proprietary or that is unknown, but there's a lot of discussions, a lot of thought to put into all the things that have to happen. It is a raw site, absolutely raw. There is power on the highway, but it isn't going to be enough by any stretch. So how do one of the thoughts was that the power generation, once you get over 20 megavolts, this thing was planned 505. Once you get over 20 megavolts, now I don't know where the 505 came from, I don't know what the study was that said, oh my gosh, the country needs, well, there's a study that says the country needs X millions of megawatt capacity to handle its population and its growth. Somebody did show that to me, and I kind of glazed over, but in the end, no, it was really weird because the amount of power that's here is like what power is Houston. And we're talking about the country. So there was dialogue, back and forth, 505 was landed on. The government theoretically has to buy overage beyond 20. This complex might need 25. We'd even worked out a way to buy smaller units to start with and then do the big power plant, but it hasn't gone. So power has been discussed, data has been discussed, data not just for the Med City, but to get into the national grid. So there was talk of tapping into the fiber line that's just south of Harcourt, Port Harcourt, along the coast, the Atlantic fiber. I don't know how you tap into it. Rocket science to me. But that data center that was conceptualized, the area for it was to accommodate national use. And it was going to start with banking, the national banks, to give them proper backup and to give them proper off-site crash capability, or not crash, recovery capability. That was some of the thinking, because you're thinking of, we talked about all types of things of how can you generate income to